In this video, we're going to talk all about chronic neck problems and how to fix them. Now, why am I making this video? Because rehab in its current form often fails to address these neck problems, and this is what causes them to become chronic. And the stats also back this up. If we look at a common neck injury like whiplash, some studies suggest that up to 47% of people still have symptoms 1 year later. And if we look at this systematic review, it estimates that 30 to 50% of people not only have pain, but other neck-related symptoms like dizziness and ear problems. And when we think about these strange, debilitating symptoms occurring in 1 out of 3 people, that's actually pretty crazy. And it tells us that rehab, as we know it, is just not effective. The real reason that I'm making this video is because I was that 1 out of 3 people. I changed my career and became a PT to crack the code and figure out what I'm going to share with you in today's video, so hopefully you don't have to do the same. So in this video, we're going to talk through the 3 problems that are holding you back from resolving chronic neck symptoms, what the solutions are for each problem, and an example of each. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so before we can even get to the problems themselves, let's talk through a general framework for rehabbing any part of the body, and this is going to be no different for the neck. So when we think about what an injury is, it's really some sort of event that causes a decrease in function, or another way to say that is a decrease in capacity. Just think of capacity as being what you are capable of. So on one side of the equation, we have the demands of the tasks of your life, and on the other side, we have your capability to be able to handle those. When you get injured, your capacity goes down, and so you are not capable of handling those demands without experiencing some level of symptoms. Symptoms simply occur when your capacity dips down below the level of demands of your everyday tasks. So when we get into this situation, we basically have 2 options to balance out this equation. Either we can reduce the demands of our tasks and limit ourselves, and this is usually what causes things to become chronic, or we can improve our capacity to meet the level of the demands of our tasks. And this is what you're going to do in a successful rehab process. Now, unfortunately, the 3 problems we're going to talk about here in a second actually get in the way of making that improvement in your capacity and thus hold you back and keep you symptomatic for longer. So let's go ahead and jump into problem number 1, which is the fear-based narratives around neck training. So depending on who you're listening to, you're going to hear people tell you that you don't need to train your neck directly.
You can really work on the neck and improve the neck, but you're not going to do it by working on the neck.
And on one side of the spectrum, we have people who are going to say it's dangerous. And then on the other side, we're going to have people saying you get enough neck stimulus with normal training. Now, in between these 2 extremes are going to be people who say don't train your neck directly because it's already overactive.
He was so neck driven, his neck was so tight that he was going to need a mandibular splint, just like this one.
And so then as we go to this other end of the spectrum, those people are really more talking to people that they assume already have enough neck capacity.
You can add neck training, and I will say if you're doing rowing and deadlifting and overhead pressing and lateral raises, you get so much kind of ancillary activation of your neck, you probably don't have to train your neck.
So they're not assuming that you had an injury and your brain is protecting the area, but instead they're assuming you actually have a normal functioning neck that already withstands the demands of your everyday tasks and lifting. But from any other injury, we know that this is often not the case. If you have an area that's injured, your brain will do everything possible to protect you from loading that area unless you intentionally do so. Now, with all that said, there's a problem with this problem, and that is that the symptoms we experience when we begin to load the neck can sometimes be a little bit scarier than they would in another part of the body. So if you have a sore knee and you go to PT, you start working your knee, yeah, maybe you'll have a little bit of soreness, but we're not talking about dizziness or ear issues or nausea, which are all common when you begin to load the neck. So for this reason, it feels true when someone says don't load the neck, and in your experience, you've loaded the neck and experienced these weird symptoms that key you into the idea of something being wrong. And the fact that most of these narratives are rooted in fear only strengthens that feeling. But the problem here isn't that something's wrong and loading your neck is dangerous, it's that you haven't found the right entry point. Think about it. If we go back to the knee and your knee was sore, you wouldn't just put a couple of 100 pounds on the bar and expect to be able to squat that. No, you'd build up gradually. And the same is true for the neck. So instead of avoiding the neck due to fear or any of these other narratives, you want to think about what is that entry point that you can use today to begin loading that neck and teach your brain that it's safe to use it in a normal manner. So one of the ones that I love to do and I feature in my new neck protocol is just a self-resisted inhale with one hand on the side of your head. So to do this, you'll take the thumb side of your hand, you'll push it against the temple part of your head, and you can use as much resistance as you want. You're gonna stay relatively neutral, which shouldn't be that provocative. Then you'll take a nice big breath in, even allowing those neck muscles to engage while you do it. And then you can exhale and you'll push a little bit harder with your hand and resist it with your head. You can then repeat that. Again, a nice big inhale. Feeling some of those intermediate neck muscles like your scalenes engage, and then exhale, pushing a little harder with your hand. And after you've done one side, obviously you can do the other. You can do it for a series of reps. I would start with something as low as 3 to 5 breath cycles or 5 to 10 breath cycles in your first few sessions, and then you can build up from there. If you want additional insight in terms of the exact progressions, then go ahead to the link in the description and check out my new neck protocol, a proven system that I developed to resolve my own issues that has all the details that you're probably wondering about. All right, so now moving on to problem number 2. It's the current state of research in neck rehab. So if you've tried to improve your neck, you've probably done something like a chin tuck, and there's a good reason for this. First of all, they dominate the literature, and there's actually a good reason for that too, which is that they are effective at engaging the deeper muscles of the neck. But there's a whole lot of other neck muscles that have other functions that we can train as well. So because these are so represented in the research, they also dominate clinical practice, and thus we leave out obvious options of training the neck that we would probably think to do in any other area of the body. And this is what I mean. If we're looking at another area of the body, let's say the hip, we just look at the movements that are available. We can flex the hip, we can extend it, we can move the leg side to side, and we take advantage of all these planes of motion. Then we also work it in different exercise setups. So we might do open chain exercises where we move the leg on the pelvis, and then do closed chain exercises where we move the body and pelvis on the leg. Now, for some reason, we don't apply the same logic to the neck. And again, I think the only reason that this is the case is because the research is so heavily biased towards specific interventions. So the solution here is going to be looking not just at flexion and extension, but also side bend and rotation. Now, once we have all those movements of the head moving on top of the body, we can also reverse this and work on movements of the body relative to the head. Now, as I'm showing this, you're probably seeing that these movements are a little bit different than what you've tried, but you also might be wondering how you'd overload these. And one of my favorite examples of how to work the body moving on the head is by using the Chaplin wall march. In all of these variations, we fix the head to the wall, and then we march the legs to induce subtle rotation and side bend from below. This way, we can actually get a progressive stimulus on the head and neck while also working on some of these other movements that you probably haven't seen in PT. Now, if we want to progress these, we can move from the wall to something like a power rack and simply adjust the height week by week. Now, we have other options of how to progress these as well, working on reps, sets, and holds, and all of this is available inside of my new neck protocol. All right, so now moving on to problem 3, and this one might be the biggest one. We tend to over-focus on symptoms rather than treating the underlying root cause. So if we go back to our initial description here, we had the demands of our tasks and then we had our capacity. Instead of just looking at symptoms as a mismatch in demands versus capacity, we often over-focus on the symptoms themselves. And because some of these symptoms are weird, dizziness, ear fullness, TMJ, we might find ourselves in different doctors' offices getting different treatments. Now, these treatments are often pretty expensive. Dental splints, special glasses, specialized forms of PT that often lead us nowhere. Why? Because we're hyperfixating on the symptoms rather than addressing that underlying issue with reduced capacity. In most cases, once we address that underlying capacity issue, will usually resolve the other symptoms to a significant percentage and also allow those more alternative treatments to actually have a positive effect. When we go out of order and we start treating the symptoms first, we hyperfixate on the symptoms, often causing us to get more worried, especially when they don't work, and we also don't get the results from them, which continues to perpetuate this idea of something being wrong with the neck. Again, this is like a feedback loop that goes in the wrong direction, where we focus on the symptoms, that creates fear. The fear then causes us to avoid loading the neck. Avoiding loading the neck keeps the capacity low, which keeps the symptoms around, and then it goes round and round and round. Now, the solution here, as we've already alluded to, is to focus on improving that capacity first, and then if some symptoms are remaining at that point, then we go down those more alternative channels. Most people think that they've tried everything, when in fact they haven't even done the most basic thing. And if that's you, you're not alone. It took me 15 years to figure this out, and it sounds kind of crazy that we just need to do the obvious, but this again is the current state of neck rehab. Now, one of my favorite examples of an exercise that can help us to restore capacity is the Chaplin neck lift. This exercise can be progressed with a weight just like any other exercise that you're gonna do in the gym. And because of this, it makes it super objective. So each week you can either add reps or add weight, maintaining good form, and over time, you're gonna be able to cause the body to have enough stimulus to promote an adaptation that ultimately raises that capacity up and matches capacity to task demands. And remember, when these match, that's when symptoms drop. All right, so just to recap, we have 3 core problems that contribute to chronic neck symptoms. The first is buying into those fear-based narratives. The second is over-focusing on certain exercises while leaving out key planes of motion and exercise setups. And the last is over-fixating on symptoms before restoring capacity. If we can keep these in mind and employ the solutions and exercises that we talked about, we can build that capacity back, match capacity to task demands, and overcome those chronic symptoms. All right, so that's it for this video. As always, like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things to help the algorithm help me, help more people. And if you want a proven step-by-step system that I created to overcome chronic neck issues, then go down and get the new neck protocol at the link in the description. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.